Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of the Shoulda Gone Pro podcast. Welcome back. Hope everyone had a good weekend. I'll be honest, we were going to come on the show today with a different topic, but a lot of NFL news came flying our way today, so we had to pull a Yui on our plans, and we're going to talk some NFL football today. Some big news went down, so we'll get into that. And go from there. But Brock, how you doing today?
Yeah, this was unlike any Tuesday I think I would have ever imagined it being. I was just sitting at work around noon, get a tweet that the Russell Wilson got traded to the Broncos. Rodgers was coming back to the Packers. So I mean, yeah, pretty crazy day all around. But yeah, we'll dive into that. I think there's argument to make that Russell Wilson being traded is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, trades in NFL history. It's not every day that a Super Bowl winning franchise quarterback, future Hall of Famer, gets traded like that. So, But yeah, we'll get into that in just a second.
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into that. But we'll start off. We talked the last episode about the UFC fight over the weekend, the UFC 272 card. So I'll hand it over to my UFC correspondent, Brock, to fill us in. I watched it, but I definitely can't give great analysis. So let us know what you think about the card this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't nearly as many finishes as fans hoped for. But I mean, really and truly was some really good fights. The fighter from Ukraine, the first ever UFC Ukrainian fighter, won in the first round. Gave a really nice speech after the fight that was just really touching with all the stuff that's going on over there, obviously. And then when we got to the main card, obviously, everybody's favorite UFC fighter, Greg Hardy, got knocked out for the third fight in a row. So good. I mean, honestly, screw that guy. Moving up the fight card, Bryce Mitchell, Edson Barboza. Really great fight, toughest fight of Bryce Mitchell's young career, and he took it in stride, dominated Barboza for 3 rounds, held him down, really didn't let Edson get anything going in the kicking game or punching game. And then the second to last, the co-main event, the late replacement, Rafael Dos Anjos and something Moicano. A lot of controversy in that fight just around the fact that it really could, for one, I was surprised it was still a 5-round fight. I mean, these guys agreed to fight each other on about 5 days' notice, and usually co-main events co-main events and like non-title fights are generally, unless they're main events, are generally 3 rounds. This one was a 5-rounder. Really confused by that. For one, I thought it should have been over in the 3rd round. Moicano was getting rocked the entire fight. Went on for 2 more rounds. In the 5th, he had a little bit of a spark, but Dos Anjos had just taken his foot off the pedal by that point, and Dos Anjos cruised to the unanimous decision victory. They took Moicano to the hospital after that fight. His face was beat up. It was pretty bad.
I did see that, yeah.
Pretty bad. And then the main event, the bad blood between Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal, it will remain. I thought those guys were going to fight in the parking lot after they got done. I don't know. I saw a lot of people roasting Colby Covington on Twitter and TikTok and everything, saying he was just, it was a cheap fight, all this and this and this, ripping Colby Covington. But I mean, at the end of the day, give some respect to the guy. I mean, he won every aspect of the fight. Masvidal definitely had the big shot there in the 4th round that stunned Colby, but they didn't count it as a knockdown. He didn't really get knocked down. He didn't even really touch his knee to the canvas. He got right back up. Covington was, for the most part, getting the most of Masvidal in the striking exchanges on the feet. And then, he just got him up against the cage, took him down, held him down. And then Colby Covington had almost 20 minutes of control time on the ground, landed like 200 strikes, was just brutalizing Masvidal for 5 rounds. And, it really looked like after the 3rd round, Masvidal's gas tank was empty and he was ready to be out of there, but he had 2 more rounds. And there's no worse spot to be in the UFC than when you're tired and you've got some guy laying on you for another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But credit to Masvidal, though. in that the fourth and fifth round, Colby Covington had his back for a majority of the round and just kept trying to submit him, and Masvidal wouldn't let it happen, was determined not to get finished. So there's a moral victory there. But, I mean, definitely not the most exciting fight, but I think it's the fight when you looked at what was going to happen. That's how Colby Covington was going to win. And, I mean, he went in there and handled his business and took care of Masvidal and had a pretty legendary call out of Dustin Poirier after the fight. So hopefully that's next. But yeah, no, exciting card. Definitely was not the fight of the year candidate, Masvidal Covington, that I thought it was going to be, but still a great fight all around. But that's enough of the UFC talk. We'll get into the the important stuff.
No, yeah. Yeah, I appreciate your insight into into the UFC world for sure. But yeah, we'll ease our way into the NFL news. You know what, I'll do it in chronological order. So, yesterday we got some surprising news from Atlanta. Calvin Ridley, who took majority of the season off last season for personal reasons, will be forced now to miss all of next season due to betting on games. I was surprised to see this. There's only been a couple players in NFL history that have been at least caught doing this. He came out and tweeted right after. He didn't tweet out some big apology thing or anything. He came out and said he didn't think it was that big of a deal because it was only $1,500. They later came to find that he didn't have any insider info on any of the games or anything, so they didn't find conclusive evidence that he knew stuff about the games before they happened. But regardless, you still can't do it. So definitely surprising there, because that's one of like the most obvious no-nos for professional athletes is betting on games, especially if this is even a suspicion that you might have some insider info on things or players you might miss that the public doesn't know about yet. So very surprising there. He didn't really seem to agree with it. I feel like there are a lot of players that, not a lot, but I feel like there are some players who have dabbled in this that just haven't gotten caught. And he was one of the ones that ended up taking the bullet. So, yeah, I was surprised to hear this news. I honestly don't know why he was out from majority of last season. I know he said it was like personal reasons, and I don't know if they've actually come out and said what the reasoning was, but yeah, it's definitely surprising to hear. Now the Falcons were listening to trade offers for him before the suspension, and now, well, they came out and said that they declined all of them, even though there were some good offers, because they wanted to be ethical and they knew something was going to happen to Ridley, so they didn't want to feel unethical by trading him away right before he gets suspended for a year. So, I mean, props to the organization for being ethical in that regard, because that would be a really crappy move to do on somebody. But yeah, I was a little surprised too by it being an entire season as well. I feel like they're trying to send a message with this saying, don't even tempt to try to get away with this, because the hammer is coming down. What was your reaction to the Calvin Ridley suspension, and do you feel that the whole year is a fair suspension for him?
I mean, I was definitely surprised by the news. It's not every day that you hear a professional athlete get suspended for betting on games. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think from the article I read on ESPN, it said he did put money on Falcons games. Granted, he wasn't technically playing; he was on their like non-football list or whatever. So he was technically away from the team. Still, obviously, a no-no. And I mean, there was a couple tweets last night that's like Calvin Ridley has to be the worst sports bettor in history, because he only bet $1,500 and he got suspended for the full season, so he's missing out on his $11 million contract.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I mean, all jokes aside, obviously a very serious matter. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to think of the suspension, because I mean, in the light of everything, yeah, it's illegal. You can't place bets on games like that. But I mean, when you look at it compared to other like recent suspensions in the NFL, I mean, Ray Rice only got 2 games for that video of him punching his girlfriend in the elevator, girlfriend or fiance, I can't remember. But either way, I mean, Kareem Hunt got suspended, I think, 6 or 7 games for kicking that lady in the hotel room. Um, so, I mean, I feel like those are obviously a lot more serious issues. And I felt like the penalty definitely didn't match the crime
Mm.
in those instances. But I mean, I understand why the NFL did this and it did it for a full season. I think it's kind of that what you said, like set an example, bring the hammer down. Just know that if you get caught doing this, you're screwed and you're going to get suspended. I mean, it said at least the 2020 season, 2022 season. So who knows if it's additional games after that. But I mean, I think the NFL definitely did this to set an example. I can't remember the last time an NFL player got caught betting on games. Certainly one not as well named as Calvin Ridley. I mean, he's a really good player. I think a first round pick, came out of Bama.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, obviously, I think the NFL just gave that penalty to set an example and let everybody else know that if you get caught doing this or have any connection to this, this is the penalty you're gonna get, obviously to deter it from happening in the future. But I just feel like when you compare it to other suspensions that NFL players have gotten, I mean, yeah, the league's drug policy is what it is back then. But I mean, Josh Gordon got 6 seasons for smoking marijuana, and and Ray Rice gets 2 games for domestic violence. I mean, it just doesn't really add up. But I think in this instance, I understand why, to set an example, but it just doesn't feel like the punishment fits the crime when you compare it to some of the other stuff that's happened to NFL players for punishment.
Yeah. I feel like part of their thought process with making it, trying to set this example with this one, is because some of the other suspensions that have been given out were also with crimes, and with crimes, obviously, you have to do with problems with the government and everything like that. So I feel like they might think there's like the secondary thing to it as well, because obviously it's not illegal to bet on the games if you're like a regular person. But yeah, it's really interesting though to think, because I would feel like they'd want to set an example, not just for stop the betting, but to stop all of these criminal acts that happen with these players as well. They want to set an example to kind of take this stereotype off of some of these guys and really push this like in a positive direction, and lower the crime rates and suspension rates too. So personally, I would have thought he should get probably like half a season or maybe 3/4 of a season, but a full season is pretty substantial. So it makes me question Calvin Ridley's future with the Falcons too. Missing last season or majority of it due to undisclosed reasons, and then being out at least all of next season. So that's almost 2 full years away from the Falcons organization. It really makes you question if they even want to keep him around. And obviously now his trade value, not that they can trade him right now, but after the season's over, his trade value might plummet due to his inconsistency to stay on the field, and his off the field issues. So yeah, big questions, but it's interesting to see how the NFL decided to handle someone betting on games, and not to make too many jokes about it, but I did see people saying he's obviously not a good bettor because he's betting on Falcons games and they don't win. So, but yeah, I can't say that much because I'm a Lions fan, but still, it's yeah, it's really interesting to see this unfold. And I believe there's only been like 5 or 6 players before who have gotten caught betting on games, and a lot of them were in the old days. So kind of crazy to think about there. But moving ahead to what happened this morning, at least the first one today, Aaron Rodgers has agreed to come back to Green Bay. The initial rumor was 4 years, $200 million, which is just absurd. That would be the highest paid player ever. the biggest contract ever, if that is what it actually is. But he came out later today and said, no, that's not what I signed. I am agreeing to come back to the Packers, but I have not signed that deal. I thought if he signed that deal, he'd be in his 40s making $50 million a year. We've only really seen one quarterback be able to even be closely to that money, and that's Brady, close to being worth of that money. But it's I understand. Back-to-back MVP. There's reason why you want to lock this guy down and do what it takes. But from the Packers organization, I do have questions about it. They have practically no cap space with or without this deal. So there are guaranteed that there's going to be guys walking, especially on defense. They also franchise tagged Devontae Adams today, so they got him locked down for at least one more year. But then my initial thought, which is kind of funny because you would think I'd be thinking about the Packers and them trying to get to the Super Bowl again for the first time in a while. My original thought was about Jordan Love and the fact that they drafted him a couple of years ago. I believe it was 2 years ago, and
I think 2 years. No, it was 2020. Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, 2 years ago they drafted him, and he's only really played when it's been blowout time, and then he just comes in and runs the clock out. You spent a first-round pick on the guy, so that obviously means you liked him. And if the rumors are true that you're giving a 4-year deal to Rodgers, if I'm Jordan Love, I want out there immediately. I feel like you spent the 2 years where you've learned enough from Rodgers. Where how much more can you learn? And spend 4 more years of your career to at that point, you should be in the prime of your career, and you haven't even been a starter in the league yet, or having a chance to be. If I'm Jordan Love, I'm furious about this because the Packers should just want you to sit and wait for years until you're in your 30s to play football. So that's something really interesting too, because I thought they would be more okay if they wanted to move in that direction to try out Jordan Love and get a massive haul back for Rodgers in a trade. So lots of questions here. I don't know how much better the Packers can get with the limited money, and people are going to be leaving due to wanting more money. So I understand wanting to lock down one of the best quarterbacks in the game, but outside of that, I have some questions about the Packers as a team. So what was your reaction to Rodgers agreeing to come back, and how do you feel about the situation and Jordan Love and the cap space and all that kind of stuff? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, well, obviously, Jordan Love did start the Packers-Chiefs game this year when Rodgers had the COVID issue, and I don't have the stat sheet for me. I don't remember the exact stats, but I know Packers fans were less than impressed. They still almost won that game against a Chiefs team that was not firing on all cylinders at that point. But Jordan Love certainly didn't play like a first-round pick or a guy who's ready to take over a franchise yet. So I think Green Bay made the right decision bringing Rodgers back. I could definitely see it being like a Tom Brady contract situation with Tampa Bay, where it's kind of almost like the LeBron James with like the Cavaliers contracts, where it's kind of just like a one and one, where more of like a player option. If he wants to come back, he can. But like you said, if they do bring him back for 4 years, if it's $200 million, that's absolutely insane because, Green Bay is strapped for money right now. They were over the cap already coming into this offseason. They had to franchise tag Devontae Adams. I know Marquez Valdez-Scantling's a free agent. And then I was reading a report that they might have to release, I think it's Zadarius Smith, who missed all of this season with back surgery and came back for the one playoff game. But then, you look at it, I think the Packers, they were calling, Aaron Rodgers was calling it, and Devontae Adams were calling that season last year the last dance for a reason. That felt like the last year where they were going to be able to have a wealth of talent. I don't know exactly the contracts they signed Rasul Douglas and Devondre Campbell to, but I don't think it was multi-year deals. And those were two of the best players on your defense last year. Rasul Douglas had a couple defensive touchdowns in the second half of the year. Devondre Campbell, I believe, was their tackle leader. So, I mean, if you lose both of those guys and Zadarius Smith, I mean, that's three of your best players on defense last year. Yeah, Zadarius Smith didn't play, but he was a Pro Bowler just recently as a couple seasons ago. So, I mean, formed a great pass rush on the other side with Preston Smith, who weirdly enough, they're not brothers. I mean, I just think it's so weird that I think they're just in such a tough spot right now. Like we were talking before the show, they're going to have to hit this draft out of the park. Cause if they're spending this much money on Rodgers and Devontae Adams, which I know that Devontae Adams just got the franchise tag, but I don't know what exactly that hit's going to be, but it's certainly upwards of $20 million at least. I mean, they're going to have to hit this draft out of the park. I mean, this is their chance to draft a receiver in the first round. I doubt they will because Green Bay never does. But I mean, yeah, it's just such a strange situation. I mean, I remember watching the draft live with my buddy who was a Packers fan in 2020, and he was so pissed off when they drafted Jordan Love in the first round because, I mean, Rodgers had just come off an MVP, was playing great, and I mean, now it almost felt like a slap in the face. There was receivers to take on the board, and they drafted his replacement when he still had time left, when he still had like 2 years left on his contract. Mm-hmm. So understandably so that Rodgers was upset, but I mean, the kid's not ready. I mean, he showed that against Kansas City, and I mean, obviously Green Bay would know watching him in practice, preseason, that game against the Chiefs, if he was ready to take over a franchise, and he's not there yet. So I get why Green Bay brought him back. I feel like you had to. This team would be in a lot of trouble if they didn't have Aaron Rodgers, because I think if Aaron Rodgers walked, Devontae Adams was likely going to walk. A lot of people connected him to Vegas with Derek Carr. They were teammates in college at Fresno State. I saw one prediction that said Devontae Adams could go to the Jacksonville Jaguars because they could throw a bunch of money at him. That would be a hell of a grab for Trevor Lawrence, having one of the top three receivers in the NFL. But I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, but again, like you've heard all these analysts talk about it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers technically speaking, probably has the easiest path to the playoffs division wise. I mean, Detroit is still in a rebuild. Minnesota now in a rebuild. My Bears, as much as I hate to say it, the guy owns us for a reason. He'll find a way. Doesn't matter with what roster. It always feels like Aaron Rodgers will find a way to beat the Bears, rip our heart out. But I mean, he's owned the division ever since he's taken over as a starter. And I mean, more recently, I mean, the Vikings haven't been great. The Lions haven't been great. The Bears, outside of the 2 years they made the playoffs and won the division back in 2018, have been very inconsistent. So, I mean, yeah, I think they make it back to the playoffs, but I mean, are we going to be talking about the same narrative next season when Green Bay makes it to the playoffs, loses in heartbreaking fashion because your boy doesn't play that well like he always does because he doesn't trust any other receiver other than Devontae Adams? Is he just going to be complaining again about not having enough weapons or he can't do it all by himself? Mm-hmm. I mean, where does it stop? I mean, at some point, he has to stop pointing the fingers and realize that take some of the blame that you haven't necessarily played your best game in some of these playoff games. And it's just, it's your fault too that you haven't been as successful as you want to be. But yeah, I mean, I think Green Bay and Rodgers made the right decision coming back to Green Bay. But I mean, we'll see when the details of the contract get laid out. But I mean, if they sign him to a 4-year, $200 million contract and they're going to pay this guy $50 million a year into his 40s, that's good for you, but you're going to be lacking in the depth department and everywhere else on your roster. If you have holes to fill, you're not going to be able to fill them, and you're going to have to really hit home on some of these draft picks. So we'll see. I mean, yeah, I think I was a little upset that Rodgers is going to be back terrorizing the NFC North for a couple more years. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, we'll see what the Packers do around him and how they handle the draft. And if this team, I think they'll likely regress a little bit. They'll definitely have a little bit harder of a schedule next year, being that they were the best team in the NFC. So we'll see how some of the teams they play when that schedule gets released, who they play next year. and how they fare. But yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't really shocked. I didn't think Rodgers would leave. It was more of just a hope that he would leave.
Yeah, I I'm not sure. I mean, it feels like it's the right choice, but it more so feels like it's the safe decision by both sides to agree to this deal. Because Rodgers could take a risk, go somewhere else, and it could be bad, or it could be the miracle in disguise for him. And the Packers could trade him away, get a big haul, and bring in some help and try and have Jordan Love pop off. But yeah, I feel like if you're going to keep Rodgers, which they're going to, um, you have to. I feel like you'd think about trading Jordan Love and trying to get some help and some depth for this team, who I believe are had the second least amount of money to spend outside the Saints. Whoever you're gonna throw a bag at Taysom Hill for some reason, and it's interesting to think about. You would think he also wanted to take more of a cap-friendly deal if you knew how tight the Packers are with money. So we'll see what the actual deal turns out to be. But yeah, massive news obviously out of the NFL. But I do have a feeling, like you mentioned, that these narratives are going to stick around, and if they don't get some help for him, whether it be in the draft or trading for somebody or something like that, we're going to hear the same story of he wants to throw Devontae Adams, and then they lose in the playoffs again. So, yeah, interesting situation, and I'm sure we'll hear some more news about it as next couple of days or so as things transpire and he signs his new, probably lucrative contract. But
Yeah, just one quick thing on that real quick. I mean, it feels like all these NFL teams, there's always a way to play some salary cap magic. But I mean, I feel like the Saints, I mean, that the void years of the contract with Taysom Hill, so it's not technically as much money as it was, which still kind of confuses me. But I mean, the Packers, I think, coming in were like $30 million over the cap. So I mean, I feel like to a certain point, without compromising some of your depth, there's only so much cap space you can clear up before you start getting into tough cap decisions where you have to cut some people. And obviously, I know the salary cap for the NFL went up this year to like 208 million, I think. So it jumped 10 or 12 million dollars, which certainly helps. But I mean, still, there's only so much salary cap magic and maneuvering you can do, restructuring deals before you have to start legitimately offloading money to sign some of these guys and improve your team. And I mean, it's just going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I'm interested to see what the actual numbers will be when he gets it signed, and obviously, I think that's going to be hopefully soon. I would love to find out what those numbers are, and if he went team friendly, which I doubt he probably did. But again, that's the thing. I mean, some of these quarterbacks complain about not having enough talent around them or not enough players. Well, when you're getting paid 30% of a salary cap just to yourself,
yeah,
I mean, at some point, you know, like I understand you want to get your bag, and I mean, the quarterback is the most lucrative position in the NFL for a reason. But I mean, if you're going to complain about not having depth or enough talent or help around you, I mean, you have to look back at yourself and be like, okay, 30% of the cap is just being spent on me. They're probably doing the best that they can, given the fact that I'm absorbing such a large percentage of the salary cap.
yeah, and these teams feel like they're almost required to spend this much money because other teams are. So everyone feels like they kind of have to give in and spend this much money on a quarterback. And I do agree that they should be getting paid pretty well and should be towards the top of their team as far as salary cap goes. But I'm afraid we're going to get to the point where it's almost going to seem ridiculous and it's going to cause teams to have trouble building around people. I mean, it already has caused that, but I feel like everyone kind of feels the peer pressure to offer these massive contracts to people to have them stick around. So, yeah, interesting situation. And I know a lot of NFL free agency stuff will be flying at us sooner rather than later. So, we'll be talking about all that as well. So, interesting stuff. But one more thing out the NFL that happened this afternoon. And if you saw our tweet today and everything, obviously you know that we didn't really expect this to happen. I wasn't even contemplating this would even be a possibility. But Russell Wilson has been traded away from the Seattle Seahawks, and it's real. It's not fake. Pete Carroll kept saying, "Oh, we're not trading him. There's no way he's going to get traded. He's going to be here the whole time. No way." And then I checked my phone today, and he's gone to the Denver Broncos of all teams. So the Denver Broncos get Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick. But then Seattle, I feel like, got a pretty massive haul back in return for Russell Wilson. Seattle got Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, who's a D lineman, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick. Looking at this, I feel like it's hard to not to say that both teams got what they wanted out of this. The Broncos have kind of felt for a while that they were a quarterback away. Drew Lock did not pan out. Bridgewater didn't pan out. Paxton Lynch wasn't even the thing, really. And there's a lot of questions at the quarterback spot after the retirement of Peyton Manning. So I feel like this is a great move for the Broncos, having a good team already built around them and then bringing in a Hall of Fame quarterback in Russell Wilson. I feel like this could propel them into the playoffs next year for sure. And obviously they gave up a pretty big haul here. Drew Lock, he's a decent enough starter to get a job done in some games, but he can't do anything special. So for Seattle, it's more of a placeholder there, maybe a backup next year. Noah Fant, who I think is a great tight end. So that is a hit to the Broncos losing their top tight end there, who I feel like he's a young guy. He's pretty fast, and I feel like he has a lot of potential. So that is a decent pickup for Seattle to have some value in that. So Russell Wilson will definitely be missing that next season. Shelby Harris, I feel, is a pretty good D lineman for a Seahawks defense who used to be unstoppable and now seem to have too many holes in it. And then 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a 5th is a pretty good haul as far as picks go. I mean, not to compare trades, but if you remember the Stafford Goff trade, it was Goff and 2 firsts and a 3rd. And if you look at it now, I mean, Stafford won a Super Bowl with the Rams, and so their draft pick is practically a 2nd-round pick since it's the last one in the 1st. So I feel like Seattle really did well with their return here. Probably they've been negotiating for about 2 weeks, so this has been long in the works. Seattle obviously had too many holes in their roster. They needed to rebuild, so I feel like that's a win for them. Denver kind of in this spot now where they have a good roster built in Denver. They were just missing that centerpiece in the quarterback. So this is a great move for them. It's got to be a little bit shocking for Russell Wilson to if he didn't already know stuff was going down, which I assume he probably did, but because he did agree to waive his no trade clause. But he does have 2 years left on his deal, so I feel like the Seahawks also knew that they weren't going to re-sign him. So it was good to get this haul back and start your rebuild a little bit early. One more thing, I was thinking too about Pete Carroll, who I believe he's one of, if not the oldest coach in the NFL. If he'd want to stick around for a rebuild, that doesn't seem like something he'd want to do at this stage of his career. So it'd be interesting to see if he sticks around, if he ends up calling it quits, or what happens in Seattle with that. But I feel like this is a good move for Seattle to kind of jumpstart that rebuild, and Denver got their guys. So I know you were a little bit shocked about seeing this trade too pop up today. What were your reactions to it? How you feeling about each side and what they got? And yeah.
Well, starting off, a lot of people were saying that obviously they were talking about it for a couple of weeks, so it had nothing to do with the Aaron Rodgers move. But I feel like I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, obviously, if it was in the works for a couple of weeks, I don't know if I want to say this was necessarily plan B, but it feels like, okay, Denver was kind of covering their back that if Rodgers does decide to go back to Green Bay, we have this off to the side just in case that happens. And I mean, I think it's a win-win for both sides. I mean, what's the one thing Seattle has needed since they made that horrible trade for Jamal Adams of the Jets? Draft capital. They get that now. 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a 5th. Two really good players. Drew Lock has been very underwhelming. But I mean, yeah, I think it's obviously a win-win for both sides. If you look at Seattle, they can use those picks this year and next year to improve their team, plug some holes on that roster. Not a very quarterback-heavy draft. And I mean, I think Seattle has the number. I think Denver's pick was number 9. So yeah. You could also, I mean, it's possible Seattle maybe trades back into the first round, adds even more draft capital. If they don't like what they have available at number 9, that's certainly something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I mean, I think I definitely would look out for Seattle to sign a quarterback, maybe like a Mitch Trubisky or a Marcus Mariota or a Carson Wentz or something along those lines just for this year to kind of what they call that stopgap, the gate quarterback or whatever, just to hold down the fort for a year until next year's quarterback class is expected to be a lot better. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, then you look at it for Denver, feels very similar to the Peyton Manning situation. They got Peyton Manning after he came off that neck surgery in Indianapolis and produced probably one of the greatest passing seasons in NFL history through 50 touchdowns. And I don't know if they won this
55 touchdowns, right?
They didn't win the Super Bowl that year though. I know they made 2 Super Bowls, obviously had the blowout embarrassing loss to Seattle and then beat Carolina in Super Bowl 50. But I mean, you'll take that. And I think this gets Denver. I mean, can we talk about how stacked that division is in the AFC? I mean, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr. I mean, that's going to be, if any of those guys winning that division is going to be absolutely freaking brutal. And I mean, great. I mean, it almost feels like Russell Wilson's going from one tough division in the NFC to a tougher division. Yeah. But I mean, he wasn't going to win anything in Seattle at all. I mean, they were clearly the 4th best team in that division. And I mean, I think if you're Denver, really, I mean, yeah, giving up Fant stinks, but I think you could probably find another tight end in free agency or the draft. Obviously might not be as good, but I mean, Christ, just call up Iowa's coach. They've probably got 7 on deck. School just freaking shits out tight ends.
Yeah.
But I mean, you didn't give up any of your good receivers. I mean, you still have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler was hurt this year. You get him back. Javonte Williams, the running back, who was a rookie last year, is terrific. They have an above average offensive line. I mean, I think Russell Wilson is improving. And obviously Denver's defense has been a staple. There's even rumors that Von Miller might want to come back for a reunion to Denver. So, I mean, if you can get Von Miller back too and even bolster that defense even further, I mean, the corner they got last year from Alabama, Surtain, is a stud. Oh, yeah. And, I mean, they've got really good pieces all over that defense. And, I mean, on the offensive side of the ball, they have plenty of weapons, a good offensive line, good back. So, I mean, I think Denver is going to be a team to certainly watch out for and to fear next year in the AFC. They're going to be no slouch. I mean, coming out of that division is going to be brutal. So whoever does, I mean, kudos. But, I mean, that's easily now, I think, the best division in football, and it's really not even close. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, like I said, I think that's probably the biggest trade in NFL history. I mean, there's not too often. I can't even think off the top of my head the last time a player of Russell Wilson's caliber has been traded to a team like that. And I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, good for Denver. They realized they were stuck in a hole. This year's quarterback class wasn't that good. They swung for the fence. They got Russell Wilson. And I mean, he's going to look good in that Denver orange and blue, playing a mile high. So yeah, I mean, Denver's going to be a team to watch next year. I mean, they were 7-10 this year with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater as your quarterback. And I mean, you add Russell Wilson to a great roster with a good defense. And, I mean, Denver's going to be scary next year. I mean, if they can add a couple more pieces in free agency, get a couple on a couple of the draft picks they do have left, I mean, watch out. Denver could be a Super Bowl contender immediately next year. I mean, that's the effect Russell Wilson has. I think that was the first time he's missed the playoffs or had a losing season in his time in Seattle was last year. Obviously, Seattle's roster was not great. He missed a lot of time with that finger injury. And I mean, you're getting a major upgrade at quarterback. And I think, go back to Peyton Manning when he came to Denver. I think that's the ceiling this team has now with an elite superstar future Hall of Fame quarterback under center.
I really like that Peyton Manning Broncos comparison. I don't really think about that, but I really like how that really connects well. I've heard a lot of good things about Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, so maybe the Seahawks swing that way at number 9 if they wanted to go quarterback right now. But yeah, it's I think Denver hit it out of the park here as long as things seem to pan out. I think that this could be a situation where, as crazy as it sounds, we kind of have the potential of all three or every team in the division making the playoffs, the division winner, then all 3 wild cards. I think that's legit how good this division is. There's real potential for every team to make the playoffs, as crazy as that sounds. So, yeah, this is a league-changing move. Again, you're right. I can't really think of a trade this big. Obviously, there's been some big free agent signings, but this is next level for these two teams to agree on it, and for Denver to even be able to convince Seattle to give up Russell Wilson, who, I mean, has been the face of their franchise for a while, and arguably the best player that Seattle's had. So that's a lot to ask for, and a lot even to get the guts to go on the phone and call them and say, hey, we want to discuss this. That takes a lot to begin with. So, hey, Denver got their guy. I think they've had a good team too, and it should be fun to watch that go down. But yeah. So that was what we had for NFL news today. Obviously, a lot went down, so we had to do a little twist on our original plan. Is there anything else that you want to touch on here, Brock?
Sorry, Bradley fans. I definitely jinxed you. I shouldn't have opened my big mouth and picked them to win or make the Missouri Valley Conference Championship game. That's my fault. Every time I've rooted for them this year, they've lost. That's on me. I should have just went in the gutter, shut my mouth, and checked the score at the end of the game instead of rooting for them. But, I mean, yeah, no, I think we're going to come back with some college basketball later in the week. Obviously, the conference tournaments are picking up. Obviously, a couple of the conferences have already punched their ticket. We mentioned the Missouri Valley. That's the only one I can name off the top of my head, honestly. I know Chattanooga hit a pretty crazy shot last night to punch a ticket to the NCAA berth. So, I mean, yeah, I feel like conference week is always a crazy time for some of those smaller schools who are really playing for their life. You have to win to get in. I mean, for the big school, it's not as exciting because I feel like for the most part, most of their seeds are already set, but there always is some drama. I mean, it feels like some teams have a big performance in the conference tournament and kind of get their way into the tournament. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm excited. I mean, there's no more exciting time than March Madness time in college basketball. It's honestly, I think it's better than the NBA. And I mean, college basketball rules about a month and a half span from March to April that it's just electric. And I mean, there's just nothing like it. I mean, whoever came up with that and decided that would be a good idea, you are a absolute genius. And it's been, I mean, it's been one of the best additions to college basketball ever to have a best of 68 tournament, single elimination. And I mean, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, I'll stop my jabbering, but I mean, it's crazy. There's nothing more exciting. If you don't like March Madness, you're missing out. Watch just the round of 64. And I promise you will watch until the national championship. And
Yeah.
that is did nothing. I mean, you will see a 15 seed Oral Roberts knock off number 2 Ohio State and go nuts. You'll fall in love with an underdog team. You'll pick an upset, and you'll just be set from there. And it's incredible.
It is. The schools they've never even heard of that are pulling off these crazy upsets. Just even the concept of it to bring all those teams together is just so much fun for a sports fan. And I know tons of people that don't even watch sports that watch March Madness or just football fans or just baseball fans that watch March Madness, and everyone's making a bracket. So it's a super, super fun time. And I know I pretty much have games going nonstop, whether it be on the TV, my computer, my phone, for like because the round of 64, you get like games. So there's like 4 games happening at once, like the entire day, and it's so much fun, man. Um, I can't wait for it to start up next week, but yeah. So we're planning to come back probably on Thursday, and talk about the conference tournaments. They're starting not yesterday. They're starting tomorrow, but not any of the big teams are gonna be playing yet. So, or none of the big teams will be playing yet. So we'll dive into it once it gets going a little bit and make some predictions about that. See who could be some teams that pull off some upsets and slide their way into a better seed or even lock up a spot in March Madness. So, and then we're thinking, we're going to try our best with the technology side of it to do our first ever live stream, potentially maybe Sunday, Monday time, and fill out our brackets. So we figured filling out a bracket would be a very long podcast, and it'd be hard to follow along too on just the audio side. So we might try and pull off a little live stream. I think that could be fun. You guys could come out and chat with us and tell us how bad our picks are. But and we're also planning to. I feel like this would be a fun idea too to get a bracket challenge set up. One of those bracket groups on the ESPN Tournament Challenge. Have you guys fill out your brackets and put them in there, and we can compare and maybe we'll give a prize to somebody or something. I don't know, but it's that time of year where all this fun stuff in the sports is happening, and college basketball is hitting its peak. So yeah, it should be fun stuff. But stay tuned to our Twitter and Instagram at GoneProPod for updates and everything. We'll put out those links and all that. So and let you know when episodes are dropping. But should be a fun time. So thank you as always for listening to the Shoulda Gone Pro podcast. We appreciate all your support. Is there anything else you want us to talk about? Let us know. We're open to any and everything, so go crazy. We'll be back in probably about 2 days, talk about some conference tournaments. Until then, have a great week, and we will talk to you later.